What is Sufism? Well, if I was to answer this question in the shortest way possible, I would say that Sufism is Islamic mysticism. However, this would not be very telling, and you would probably be wondering, what is mysticism? Mysticism is the idea to find the divine through direct personal experience by various means outside of more ordinary methods, such as regular prayers. Mysticism is thus, and Sufism through it, are thus alternative ways of worship. Notice that I say alternative ways of worship, not alternative beliefs. As Sufism exists within various subdivisions of Islam as an alternative practice, the various variants of Sufism are more of a method, or rather methods, available to believers in Islam than they are groups or subsects in themselves, usually. Sufism should be seen as a supplement to more normal religious practices within Islam. And these special practices can be everything from dancing, various types of special meditations, various other acts that affects the senses, sensory deprivation, living in asceticism, exposing oneself to the elements or to harm or danger generally. The practices can vary a lot depending upon Islamic subsects and the Sufi groups in question, and what is deemed to be suitable practices. As Sufism is usually ordered through Sufi orders or groups that specialize in the knowledge regarding these mysterious practices that make you come closer to the divine. These orders are in Arabic called tariqa or turuk, way or ways, as in ways towards connecting with the holy, the divine, God. And there are a lot of these orders or ways to God. And I mean a lot. Yeah, there are many. Going against what I said previously, some of these Sufi orders or ways of reaching God can in some examples be considered their own sects or subgroups of Islam, but often most of these groups actually exist within the realms of allowed practices within a larger Islamic subgroup. I need to emphasize that not all Sufism is the same, and the practices vary a lot between groups and between various Sufi orders. They can have very different rules and very different ideas about God and how to reach Him through various mystical practices. Also, Sufism can also be very personal as an experience and must not always be practiced in groups or through an order always. Some of the turuk or ways of God aren't really orders as in organized groups, but as in ways to practice your religion yourself, as a personal type of Sufism and personal practice to create a relationship to the divine. Though it is important to note that this personal sort of Sufism is still supposed to be within the schools of classical Islamic law and theology, who all recognize various practices of Sufism. And I mean all mainstream traditionalist schools of thought within both Shia and Sunni Islam. On the subject of schools of theology within Sunni Islam and Sufism, I would just here make a statement against the myth of the Hanbali Sunni school of Islamic jurisprudence being against Sufism. As the founder, Ibn Hanbal, and many later Hanbali scholars, such as Ibn Taymiyyah, did do Sufi practices, or they followed Sufi traditions. Ibn Hanbal, for example, is one of the first recorded people that lived in self-imposed poverty in order to get closer to the divine. And, for example, Ibn Taymiyyah belonged to the Qādiriyya tradition of Sufism, and his criticism of certain Sufi practices, which has become rather famous, was not a general criticism against Sufism itself, but against certain practices among certain Sufi practitioners. In fact, Ibn Taymiyyah even talked positively about Sufism and about certain practices of Sufism, as he was a follower of the Sunni Hanbali Qadiriya Sufi order. Alright, that was about the myth of Hanbalis being against Sufism. But now I would like to go to the word Sufism, sufiya, and the origin of the word. In Arabic, sufiya, Sufism derives from the consonantal root sad, waw, fa. Sufism is also known in Arabic as tasawwuf, which literally means taking on the wool, and suf is wool. In the past, before synthetic cotton and modern processing of organic cotton, wool was cheaper than cotton clothing, and thus carried by poorer, simpler people. And the first practitioners of Sufism were very much into living simple, basic lives in order to get closer to God. Thus, they carried simple clothing of wool, as it became a symbol of taking upon the burdens of living in a life of meager resources as an act of piety towards God. Living a life of faqr, living a life of poverty to get closer to God. You can even today see this aspect of Sufism in the faqir, fuqara, which are those that live in poverty in order to get closer to God. This is a sort of Sufism that has been very common throughout the ages. And the word Sufism would ultimately be a reference to this choice of a simple lifestyle to get closer to God. This is my preferred theory about the origin of the word sufiya. There does, however, exist some other theories about this word. Another theory states that the word sufiya originally comes from the Arabic word saf, meaning genuine, pure, or polished. This derivation of the word refers to the importance that Sufism generally places upon purifying one's own soul and heart from desire through the various practices within Sufism to become pure enough to meet the divine. Another argument supporting the origin of the word Sufi coming from Saf is that the word derives from the purification of red sulfur, which has traditionally had a lot of mystical symbolism associated with it that goes far further back than just Islam. Though I do doubt this origin due to various linguistical reasons, as the consonantal roots in Arabic that the words are derived from are too different. Another theory regarding the word Sufism, sufiya, is that it is a loan word, coming from the Greek words sophos, sophia, literally meaning wisdom or enlightenment. Thus the word sufiya was just the Arabic version of this word, with a separate, unrelated meaning to the associations with wool that just happened to have the same sounds. An additional argument for this is that there existed early Christian mystical movements that also named themselves in relation to the word sufiya. And it is not inconceivable that early Muslims did the same by copying Christian mysticism. I'm not convinced by this, but these things are a possibility. Regardless of the origins of the word Sufism, sufiya, Sufism is an addition to more regular practices within Islam. And I hope you enjoyed this short introductory video about Sufism. I'm planning to make more in-depth videos about various Sufi orders and phenomena within Sufism in the future. But for now, I would love to see your comments and questions in the comment section. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.
اشتركوا بالقناة من فضلكم.